Okay, well, let's dive into it. I want to show you a just a portion of a video that we saw in our first class, and it's to highlight empires. Because today I'm going to talk a little bit about Genghis Khan, who's really the creator of modern day China, and who had an agenda of attacking those with excess, wealth, and power, and was out to redistribute wealth. So let me just give you a quick look at his empire, what it covered. And it is, of all the empires, this comes in as number two, um, behind Britain. And his empire is 1310. This is after he starts around the year 10,000, 1100, around that time frame. And it's carried on by his offspring and their offspring. So it goes on for a couple of hundred years. And so this phenomenon of we come out of hunter-gatherer, we become so-called civilized, capitalism becomes somewhat ingrained, um, and we have uh, um, we have a different society. We're now growing things. We're no longer nomadic. Although, when Genghis Khan comes about, this landmass that we know as China is still, this is 1100. So the transition uh, starts 10,000 years ago, but doesn't really start gaining steam until about 5,000 years ago. The empires start building about 4,000 years ago. And so it's over a long time. And then along comes Genghis Khan, and they are still a nomadic society, this huge landmass of China. And so he now is going to be the emperor for all intents and purposes. So, um, and mind you, what he does is he conquers more lands in 25 years than the Romans did over 400 years. And he was known for distributing the fruits of his victory and established that standard for attacking wealth and to do it in service of the powerless. This also, what Genghis Khan does, sets the stage for what is the Taiping Revolution in 1850 in China and serves as the model for Mao.
Northern China, 1215 AD. The Mongols are coming. 50,000 warriors. The world's greatest cavalry army. Their leader? Genghis Khan. One of the bloodiest warlords in human history. His target? Chengdu. Today's Beijing, China's capital city. Cities are key to the story of mankind. Centers of power, learning, and wealth. They need protecting. Chengdu has 18 miles of battlements, 40 feet high. It's still vulnerable to attack. Half a million people live in Chengdu. Now, a battle for the future of mankind between the city dweller and the nomad. Genghis Khan, son of a tribal chief. His father was murdered. He was sent into exile.
If you survive a childhood like Genghis Khan, you're gonna have a chip on your shoulder. You're gonna wanna prove to everybody they were wrong. You're gonna wanna prove that you know what you're doing. You're gonna wanna prove that you're the baddest guy on the block.
He escapes his captors, fights his way to the top, unites the Mongols, and begins a campaign of conquest that will change the world. The key to his success? The horse. Domesticated 5,000 years earlier in Central Asia, horses have expanded mankind's frontiers. The Mongols can cover up to 300 miles in a day. Using the horse for warfare unlocks a new key for mankind.
If we go back to the Mongols fighting against the Chinese, what we see is the first trip point in a history that will eventually bring us to the tank. And that trip point is horses.
Mongols start on horseback, age 3. They learn to ride without using reins.
Well, when they encountered humans on foot, to the Mongols, those humans were a lot like sheep. You could scare them, you could bully them, they'd run.
They can shoot at full gallop.
It's the first version of the blitzkrieg. It is being able to ride into a place, do damage, and then disappear before anybody even knows what hit them.
Mongol warriors have 4 horses each. They can eat and sleep on horseback. No army will travel so far and so fast until World War II.
They would travel faster than the news of their arrival.
Climate change is one of the keys to the human story and drives the Mongols to change the world. "93 million miles from Earth. A surge in solar activity. Blasts of radiation scorch the planet. It's the beginning of 3 centuries of global warming.
Climatic changes in the ancient world, in the pre-modern world, directly affected historical events.
In Mongolia, drought turns pasture into desert. To survive, the Mongols sweep south towards China, the great power in Asia, home to the biggest cities in the world.
China is the great prize. If you can conquer China, you conquer the land of infinite supplies. Grain, of silk, of tea. China is the richest prize that Mongols can possibly take.
Approaching Chengdu, Genghis Khan issues an ultimatum. Surrender or die. Mongol cruelty is legend. prisoners decapitated, towers of human skulls, children slaughtered.
I imagine for someone sitting in a city, looking out over the wall, and seeing the massive Mongol horde is coming in your direction. You have to immediately question yourself as to why am I still in this city? I need to leave or I'm dead.
Genghis Khan raped so many women that as many as 1 in 200 people alive today carry his genes.
The greatest happiness is to gather into your bosom your enemies' wives and daughters.
60,000 women, it is said, prefer suicide to being raped by the Mongols. Their horses get the Mongols to the city gates, but no further. To take the city, they use Chinese engineers and force them to build battering rams. Prisoners of war attacking their own city. To defend themselves, Chengdu's soldiers must kill their own people. If the gate breaks, the city falls. The Mongols overrun Chengdu, massacre over 100,000 people, then torch the city.
The Mongols were an unbelievably effective military force. If they had a target they wanted to take, no one stood in their way.
An eyewitness reports.
The earth was greasy with human fat.
In his lifetime, Genghis Khan is said to be responsible for the death of up to 40 million people, as many as Adolf Hitler. He conquers more land in 25 years than Rome did in 400. 4.5 million square miles. The largest empire so far in human history. And the key to its success, communication. "600 years before the Pony Express, the Mongols can send messages by horseback across an area twice the size of the United States. Every 30 miles, a relay post with 400 horses. Government messengers carrying an official medallion can claim food in a fresh mount. The world's first passport.
As a result.
And as you can see that if a military force has planned out what it's going to do and has a pretty clear objective and has all the parts and pieces put in place, they can conquer more land in less time than the Roman Empire. Just something to think about in relation to contemporary events. So I want to stop this for a second. I want to come back here. Sven Beckert, in the book that I've been touting, talks about a city of Aden. And this is in Asia. And as Norman added to my commentary, that capitalism begins in South China, South Asia. Aden, then under the control of the Razalid dynasty, that the merchants of India lived there, and the merchants of Egypt also. And he added that its inhabitants have enormous wealth. Sometimes a single man may possess a great ship with all it contains, no one sharing in it with him because of the vast capital at his disposal. Aden was completely surrounded by the sea. It was quite literally a fortified node of capital, an island of capitalist. Capitalism originated on such islands. And so I want to highlight capitalism emerging. And mind you, it starts back when we first become farmers and having to trade with other farmers. So we get a more diversified individual food intake. And so it goes on for thousands of years. These changes don't happen overnight. They take a long time. And so we get to this point where, and he's talking about the 1300s, really the kind of the end of the period where the Mongol Empire is taking place. But what emerges out of that then becomes, capitalism. We have Genghis Khan has reorganized all these independent little municipalities into nation states. And it covers a broad area from the Mediterranean to Siberia. So it's a rather formidable character, but China plays a very big role here. Let me.
China was the last of the great civilizations to develop independently in the Old World, over 1,000 years after the first in Iraq. And theirs was a vision of life unique to itself. The Chinese conception of civilization differed completely from that of the West. For them, its goal was a moral order on earth, sustained by virtue, ritual, and reverence for ancestors. These ancient ideas permeated all aspects of Chinese life, even the cataclysms of our own time, from the communist revolution down to the crushing of the democracy movement here in Tiananmen Square in 1989, have been played out against these deeper forces which have shaped China for thousands of years. This is a search for the roots of Chinese history. And our search begins in the old lanes here near the Temple of Heaven in Beijing. Tucked away in the alleys here is the oldest pharmacy in Beijing, founded in 1663.
It's enough.
Simply Beijing Dongringtang pharmacy.
Yeah.
It is enough. It's so famous.
Yeah, it's now it's Beijing, China.
In Chinese medicine, as in all traditional Chinese culture, the basic idea is the search for harmony on earth. Ultimately, this was the goal of civilization itself. And to reach it, inner and outer lives must be in congruence. Yin and yang, as they say, female and male, dark and light. This elemental balance underlies all Chinese thought, whether in science or philosophy, in food, or as here, in medicine.
The discovery of the origins of Chinese history happened by a strange...
And this is really important, that their idea of balance, things have to be in balance. You can't have the, wide separations between people. You can't just be gluttonous in gathering wealth and power. But then, and so why I want to emphasize this is that when it comes to worldwide wars, these are really different philosophies that are kind of crashing on each other. It is the insatiable appetite for wealth in the West, which stands in direct contrast to what there existed in the East. And what now has happened is the West wants more and more ports, facilities, those kinds of things, natural resources, and it starts impeding. And what happens is inequality arrives in China and in India by way of the East India Company.
The first Chinese descriptions of we Westerners are not flattering. These barbarians have a grim look, untidy hair, an unpleasant smell. They have no rituals worthy of the name. They're liars and are rather arrogant. They conquer countries by fraud and force, ingratiating themselves in a friendly way before they oppress the natives. At the heart of their conduct is violence. By the 18th century, the coasts of the South China Sea were frequented by the Spanish, the Dutch, Portuguese, English, and later Americans. All bearing Chinese inventions: gunpowder, the stern rudder, the magnetic compass, paper maps. Coming not just to sell, but to impose their goods, their ideas, their religion, their will. They soon set up trading colonies, lording it from grand mansions paid for by the illicit trade in goods like opium. In the tale of colonial infamy, this is one of the least known episodes in the West. But it culminated in the central event of 19th century Chinese history, the Opium War.
The point of the opium trade simply was to sell opium to China. But in practice, that meant getting as many Chinese people addicted to the drug as possible. But opium was prohibited in China and had an almost negligible local consumption. So it had to be sold illicitly in bulk from the one permitted trading post on the mainland, Canton, and from offshore bases like this one. The indispensable link in this setup was India. There, the British imperial possessions had grown in the last decades of the 18th century. And as the British themselves produced nothing which the Chinese wished to buy, it was in India that the opium and to a lesser extent the cotton could be grown, that could be traded in for the luxuries that the British desired, and especially tea, which by then had become a national obsession. And so an infernal triangle was set up between Britain, China, and India, which parallels the tragic triangle of the previous century between Africa, the Caribbean, and Europe, the slave trade. And this was no small business, incredible as it may sound. In the early 19th century, opium was the biggest single trade anywhere. It is as if today the Colombian drug barons possessed such a powerful fleet that they were able to sail into San Francisco Bay and compel a large portion of the population of the United States to become addicted to heroin and cocaine, and to wipe out the US fleet if it intervened.
In what Gladstone called the most disreputable war ever fought by the British, the Chinese fleets, hopelessly outgunned and outdated, were smashed to pieces. Defeated by the very technology which they had invented but let stand still. For the Chinese, defeat was a shattering revelation, forced now to watch impotent as the Western barbarians, their cultural inferiors, now began to carve up the Middle Kingdom into colonies with the same greedy relish that they had scrambled for Africa and dismembered India. Unable to cope with the pressure of the outside world, the Chinese government now collapsed. Chinese people were treated like animals in their own land by the Western imperialists, harnessed to polo traps for sport, banned along with dogs in their own public parks. The great time of revolution had arrived, as the I Ching, the Book of Changes, states, and the great man was at hand, in whom all belief would reside. In 1949, Mao and the communists took power on a tide of emotion and optimism, after years of civil war, famine, and foreign rule. But in their haste to erase the past, they killed millions by ill-judged reforms and tyrannical violence. And this in the name of a Western ideology and a Western conception of history.
The point I want to get across from this is when we see the Chinese are more egalitarian, they have Genghis Khan, steals from the rich, gives to the poor, a sense of balance. Yes, we want to do well, we want to store extra food and all of that, but keep it in balance. But while that's taking place in the East, the West has had the Industrial Revolution, and it now sees a path to extraordinary wealth. And it wants ports, it wants natural resources. When we talk about Japan, we're going to talk about how America pulls in to Edo Bay with gunships to say, you are going to have to change the way you think. You're going to have to think more like us. And then they do, and they become aggressive. And the ideas of the philosophy of how we live in this world in balance, it really gets undermined, and they do indeed become more like us.
So the Honourable East India Company continued to smuggle opium, despite public outrage back in Britain. And soon the ravages of the drug became apparent in the streets of China, with millions of addicts.
By the 1820s, opium addiction became visible socially, which means opium dens on the street, people dying off, dozing off on the street. It's becoming a social problem. Suddenly, there's a huge increase of court documents relating to this. If you search 1790s, there's none. Then if you go to 1810s, maybe a few. You go to 1820s, it's a lot. You go to 1830s, it's a huge amount. So I think by mid-1830s, 1835, 36, I think it's obvious they have to do something about this.
Shocked by the social effects of the opium trade and by its drain on their silver supply, the emperor and his advisors debated what to do.
The emperor spent time looking for an upright official, because opium is something you could sell and make a lot of money. So you need someone who is upright and very Confucian, very moral.
Such a man was the incorruptible Commissioner Lin. Of his appointment, an old friend wrote, "Our great land needs thunder and lightning to revive it now." Lin gave the orders to destroy all the opium held in British warehouses.
Commissioner Lin began the destruction of the British opium in early June 1839. There were 1,200 tons of it. It took 500 workers more than 3 weeks to get rid of it all, burning it, mixing it with lime and dumping it in these ponds. And at the same time, the commissioner wrote a letter to Queen Victoria, a letter that's touching in its almost naive belief in Confucian morality. We learn that your country is 60 or 70,000 li away from China, he said. And yet foreign vessels come here to make great profit out of the wealth of our country. But by what right in return do they sell us this poisonous drug which does so much harm to the Chinese people? They may not necessarily intend to hurt us, but by putting profit above all things, they are disregarding the harm they do to others. So we ask you, where is your conscience?
We have China and the rest of the East is overrun by the West. This is in the years before the world wars. And what you have is the West has bullied its way in. It is stealing their resources. It's addicting their people to narcotics. And in Japan, we say you got to get more like us. And the Japanese go on a trek to try to learn, how do we become more like them? And they do. And they do. And then they become aggressive and attack their neighbors. And so Japan, provoked by the West, targets China, and now we have wars going on between China and Japan. Chiang Kai-shek, who comes to power in World War II and is in fact an ally of America and Britain and the Allied forces. Chiang Kai-shek thinks the British are a great threat to everyone, but he believes that the Nazis and the Japanese, the Nazis and the Japanese are allied with each other, that they are the greater evil, and we need to fight against them. But Chiang is facing a near impossibility because he has to try to hold his country together while a civil war is starting to emerge under this guy Mao, who's taking the themes of China's history and saying we need to get back to balance and all of that. Although Mao copies the West and does loads of brutal things to people, but Chiang has to try to fend off Mao and this a civil war. He has to fend off the Japanese, and he has to fight against the collaborationist who are seeking deals with the Japanese. So he's facing a nearly impossible circumstance. And so he's, got the civil war with Mao. He's got a war against Japan. He's fearful of a Russian invasion. And so his circumstances are not very good. The war begins, World War II begins, not in Europe, in 1937 in China.
7 years before World War II officially began, China was already at war. Japan launched a brutal invasion, starting the Second Sino-Japanese War, a conflict that would claim over 20 million Chinese lives. Leading the fight was Chiang Kai-shek, head of the Chinese nationalist government. Chiang's forces, vastly outgunned, waged a grueling defensive war, from the devastating Battle of Shanghai to the harrowing rape of Nanjing, where Japanese forces committed unspeakable atrocities. With limited resources, Chiang relied on guerrilla warfare, scorched earth tactics, and an uneasy alliance with Mao Zedong's communists to resist the invaders. His government was forced to retreat deep into China's interior, setting up a wartime capital in Chongqing, where they endured relentless Japanese bombing campaigns. Even after Pearl Harbor, China remained a major Allied power, tying down over 500,000 Japanese troops, preventing them from reinforcing the Pacific. The U.S. supported China with the Flying Tigers, an elite squadron of American pilots who defended Chinese skies, and by sending military aid via the treacherous Burma Road supply route. Despite this, Chiang often clashed with Allied leaders, who doubted his military strategy and saw him as an unreliable partner. Despite deep internal divisions, China's resistance played a crucial role in Japan's eventual defeat. Yet its sacrifices remain one of the war's most overlooked stories. After the war, tensions between Chiang and Mao escalated into a full-blown civil war, ultimately leading to Chiang's retreat to Taiwan, where he established the Republic of China in exile.
Okay, so what we have is there's the separation, if you will, between the East and the West. And spearheading the assault against the East are the British. And so the East India Company was really a front for the British government. But so you have India, China, Japan, others who are suffering, if you will, from the initiatives of the West and fighting back. But Chiang is pragmatic. He understands the Japanese have been pushed by the Americans to become more like the West, and they have done it, and they are on the prowl and aggressive. And so Chiang calls on Nehru from India to join forces with the British. This is out of, what? Yes. And he says in his farewell statement he wrote, I completely supported the liberation of India. The British may not understand this, but I deeply believe it may be of advantage to Britain if Britain lets go of India and lets Gandhi have his way. He noted that Nehru had complained of the contradictions in Chiang's attitude to India, supporting independence, but also requesting that it throw its lot in with the British war effort. Chiang replied that all politics was confusing, and if it were clearer, then it would be philosophy, not politics. Okay, so with that, Dave, we can open for discussion.
Okay, please use the raise your hand function. And I have a question.
Please.
You had mentioned Aden, which is where Yemen is, and you said that was the bastion of capitalism, but now it's sort of like a pirate cove. What happened?
That'll make for another class.
Okay.
But it's as I've tried to indicate all along. This area of the world at one time had no names, right? It was just people. And over time, comes agriculture, comes the capitalism, the capital process that becomes a mechanism for merchants to now gain power against the emperors and to fight. And so capitalism really becomes a mechanism for a power force to challenge the emperors. And it emerges in small little enclaves of capitalism. Yeah. It's fascinating. Yeah.
Anybody else have anything? Anybody awake?
Good or bad, it's okay.
Yeah.
Or anything related to other previous classes.
Yeah. Anybody? Looks
Okay.
What's your joy? Okay, I guess I gotta unmute.
Okay. I'm almost forgetting what I was going to ask. It seems like Britain consistently tried to make slaves of everybody it conquered. And it did so through first physical force and then economic force. Excuse me.
Dave, you can just mute her. You don't have to choke her.
It's a form of muting.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you laugh while you're choking.
While I'm choking. Go on to somebody else.
Okay.
Okay, she sort of choked up.
Well, let me just pick up from where you were there, and that is that, remember the connection between the emergence of the Industrial Revolution and what it meant. It meant enormous wealth. Yes, there had been emperors fighting and taking and getting the booty and all that stuff and adding to their wealth and power. But now you come into what will be mass production, the incipient stages of it, but what it suggests the future holds is enormous luxury. And their philosophy, their worldview, unlike the Chinese, is get as much as I can for myself. Do whatever I have to do. The ends justifies the means. And yes, and that's why they became the largest empire. Yeah.
Does anybody raise their hand function if you got anything? Don't have to. We can all go home. Here, Jessica.
Unmute. There you go.
Yeah. One thing that I found interesting about opium and China is it sounded as if the Brits were the ones who introduced the Chinese to the use of opium.
They were.
I mean, it's astonishing. I mean, everybody knows that opium comes from China and that's part of what was bad about the Chinese in general. I mean, it's astonishing to me.
Well, what you have is you're right. They knew that it was a drug, and China outlawed it, so it was against the law. That is
in China by the Chinese.
By the Chinese before Britain then comes in, and they become the drug dealers. They know what they have to do is to get people addicted. So they do a lot of things to make it easy to get, and until you're addicted to it. So yeah, and so they fight a war, and then the Brits aren't they win that fight. But they still want to come back again a second time. So it is, I mean, have you no morals? Where is your conscience? I mean, that's the question that they ask. And mind you, what are the Chinese looking for when they're talking about we need to have someone who will be our drug czar? Somebody of integrity, someone who has morals, right? Think about that. If we were looking for the drug czar today, we don't want anybody of morals. We
Not today.
It's really right. Astonishing to me that there are so many people either vying for important positions or in important positions who have no integrity. I mean, I know I'm digressing, but
how can that be?
How can that be? But it's like I was watching the guy who's nominated to head the Federal Reserve.
Oh.
And he's asked, who won the election in 2020? And like all of them, they don't answer that. They say, oh, well, the Senate certified Joe Biden. That's not the question. And that's not the answer. Give us the answer. Now, and this is probably why I've never been successful in my life, is that I would have to say, look, I know my name's going to be pulled out of nomination, but I'll be damned if I'm going to knuckle under to you. I mean, it's so. Anyway, and not to digress again, but by the way, Jessica, I bought my blind tickets for next season. Yes. Yeah.
And I just did it before I logged on to you.
Yeah.
Gail?
Yeah. Hi. Just a very quick question. So where did the opium come from that the Brits were foisting off for this drug trade in China?
Well, It's coming from India, is where
From
they're
India.
getting it at that
So
point.
not Central Asia, from India.
Well, but you see, India is considered part of Asia.
Okay.
Right? And if you look at that whole area, poppies grow through Afghanistan,
Right.
Iran, a lot of places. So it's a plant that flourishes within that environment. Yeah.
I hadn't thought of actually India south of all. Okay. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Lumped together. All right.
Joy?
Okay, I was curious about how the British encouraged the use and addiction of opium when the Chinese already knew that it was bad. How did they get it to such a point that it made such an impact?
Right.
Well, it's really by way of the East India Company, who has established itself in China. And when I say established itself, I mean they figured out how to bribe officials, how to, become involved with street people and all of that infrastructure. And so the East India Company becomes the conduit. Yeah. Yeah. Now,
So you just go out and say, here, try this?
yeah, well, right. I don't know the details of how that was. I suspect they showed them a lot of American films that, glorify, the use of drugs and all that. But no, yeah, it's, I'm sure they pioneered the techniques that have been used by drug dealers ever since. I introduce you to something and until you are then demanding it. Yeah. And you'll pay whatever price I have. I charge you a little bit or nothing, give it to you for free until I have you hooked. Mhm.
Which means dues are going up next year for sugar.
Okay. Well,
anybody got any other?
It's all right.
Yeah. So what are we doing next week?
Next week, I think we go to Japan next week. Let me make sure of that. I'm pretty sure that's where we are. Yeah, next week we get to meet Commodore Perry in more detail, and we'll look at what happened with Japan. How did Japan go from being an isolationist, pacifist country who remained insulated from the world for 250 years, suddenly is now an aggressor invading other countries. And America is deeply implicated in that, which in turn means America is deeply implicated in Pearl Harbor. So we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah.
Okay. And if everybody can give Sal some warm applause for learning all about our daddy Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
And that was a great show that you clipped from. With the horses and the Mongols.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
interesting.
there's a great movie, The Mongols, but dramatic depiction of Genghis and his family, which I think is a great film to watch. Yeah, but by the way, Dave's joke about how our ancestors of Genghis Khan, to notice how frequently rape is a part of warfare.
It's a thing of power. War is power.
It's just we did the class on the Balkans and what happened there. Rape was central in there. we, now talking about Genghis Khan and others will look at the end of World War II, the Russian rape of Western Europe and Eastern Europe too. I mean, it's and the German rape of Eastern Europe. So I mean, this is I don't know that enough attention has been given to the role of rape and warfare.
Or the role of rape and history in general.
Right.
Yeah. But it's not, and the fact that it's not lust.
No, it has nothing to do with sex or lust.
Brutality. The brutality of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And spread their seed, perpetuate their DNA. All the blue-eyed people in Central Asia, Afghanistan, from when I guess Alexander came through.
Wait, Gail, what are you saying about my blue eyes? No, you're right. Yeah, sure. Well, great. Well,
enjoyed it.
I hope you're getting something out of this class. I appreciate you coming. Everybody
Fear of war.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or anybody want to, how about Iran? Anybody, any comments about Iran? What's
Are we on or off in this war?
Oh no, we've destroyed it all.
Actually, we destroyed it like months ago.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
and
everything was done months ago. We're taking years to rebuild.
Yeah, but this weekend is the Inman Park Festival, and the Big Mask Project is going to be marching with our big masks in a joyous parade at the Inman Park.
Oh, nice. Nice. I've noticed, Gail, that you've become somewhat of a rebel. I see you out at protest and stuff.
It's not a recent, yeah, it's been there for a while. But yes.
But now she's a rebel with a cause.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about wearing my King's outfit to class one day.
Yes.
With the No Kings march, I had a King's outfit. Yeah.
It was regal and royal.
But we don't want kings.
Well, that's what bothered me through the protest. People kept just yelling at me, "No kings." It's like, what?
Just making the point. Right.
Bye.
All right, everybody, be safe. We'll see you next week.
Take care.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.